My wife told me my new spiritual mentor, and I need to reveal my enlightened nature. So I wish them good luck. Nina marched into my animal clinic with a man wearing a velvet blazer, dropped 3 crates of quantum wellness supplements in the reception area, and announced this over my lunch break like she was, updating me on the weather. It was a Tuesday. It was raining. The clinic smelled like industrial bleach and the nervous sweat of a golden retriever I'd just prepped for a tumor removal. I was sitting at the front desk because my receptionist was out sick, eating a dry turkey sandwich out of a Tupperware container. I had built this veterinary practice from the ground up. 3 years of 70-hour weeks. I secured a $450,000 commercial loan before Nina and I even met, and I registered the LLC alone. Her name was nowhere on the paperwork. She sighed heavily when I stopped eating my sandwich and stared at the cardboard boxes leaking packing peanuts onto the linoleum. "Don't be closed-minded, Tobias," she said. She adjusted her posture, standing abnormally straight. "I've been training under Sven for 9 months. We are launching a wellness empire. You'll need to clear out the surgical suite for our inventory. The climate control in there is optimal for the cellular resonance of the tinctures." I looked at the man in the velvet blazer, Sven. He looked to be in his late 40s, wearing beaded bracelets that clicked when he crossed his arms. He offered a serene, vacant smile, as if forgiving me for being spiritually bankrupt. He didn't speak. He just emanated a practiced, expensive calm. I looked back at my wife, the surgical suite, where I do surgery on animals. "You can convert one of the exam rooms," Nina said, waving a hand dismissively. "This is a pivot, a necessary realignment of our household energy. My aura has been stagnant, and Sven helped me realize I've been dimming my light to make you comfortable." I closed the Tupperware. I didn't yell. I just felt a very cold, very heavy stone settle in my stomach. When someone uses that many buzzwords in one breath, they are usually trying to distract you from a number. "How much of our savings did you spend on this, Nina?" Sven closed his eyes and took a deep, audible breath through his nose, as if the concept of money was a foul odor. "It's an investment in my frequency," Nina said. Her voice tightened. The serene facade cracked just a fraction. "How much?" $80,000. The clinic went completely silent, save for the hum of the refrigerator holding the vaccines. $80,000. That was the emergency fund. That was the safety net for the house, the clinic, and our lives. "Where are the sick animals supposed to go?" I asked, keeping my voice entirely flat. "They can find a traditional vet," she said, lifting her chin. "We are moving into holistic frequency healing. The animals will sense the shift. Did you tell your father you liquidated our emergency fund to buy quantum tinctures?" Her expression wavered before hardening into a scowl. Her father, Arthur, was a retired diesel mechanic who had worked his hands to the bone for 40 years. He despised scammers, despised laziness, and loved his daughter fiercely. Nina knew exactly how Arthur would react to Sven and his velvet blazer. "My dad gets it," she snapped. "He knows I'm a visionary. He knows I'm tired of playing second fiddle to a bunch of sick cats." She was constructing a narrative. Right there in front of me, I could see the scaffolding going up. She needed me to play the anchor, dragging down her potential. She needed me to be the oppressive force, so she could be the breaking free heroine. If I yelled, if I threw Sven out by his collar, I would just be playing my assigned role. I stood up. I picked up my turkey sandwich and dropped it into the wastebasket under the desk. "Good luck," I said. I walked past them, went into my office, and locked the door. I sat down at my desk and pulled up my banking app on my phone. The joint savings account balance was $14.32. The withdrawal had cleared that morning. Wire transfer. By the time I drove home that evening, the house smelled like burning sage. The thick, acrid smoke hit me the second I opened the front door. In the living room, a professional ring light was set up, glaring blindingly white. Nina was sitting on a floor cushion, speaking into her iPhone. Sven was sitting just off camera, nodding rhythmically. And for so long, I allowed the toxic scarcity mindset of my partner to dictate my worth. Nina was saying to the lens, her voice thick with rehearsed emotion. "But when you step into your power, the universe provides." I walked into the kitchen, poured a glass of tap water, and leaned against the counter. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from her sister, Chloe. "You need to do the work, Tobias. You're terrified of a powerful woman. It's embarrassing to watch you stifle her." I didn't reply. I just drank my water and listened to my wife broadcast our private life to the internet. By the following evening, her relentless TikTok campaign about overcoming toxic scarcity mindsets hit 20,000 views. Her mastermind group, a collection of women who all spoke in the exact same therapeutic cadence, flooded her comments with fire emojis and praise for her bravery. Within 10 days, the reality in my home shifted entirely. Nina moved Sven into our home office. I came home on a Thursday to find my filing cabinets dragged out into the hallway, my tax documents, my veterinary journals, my business ledgers, stuffed into trash bags. In their place, Sven had set up a massage table, several Himalayan salt lamps, and a display of the quantum supplements. "Sven needs a sanctuary for his remote energy clearings," Nina explained from the doorway, holding a mug of matcha. "You have your clinic. I need my space here." She didn't stop there. The narrative bled out of the house and into the town. I went to grab a coffee before my morning rounds, and the local barista, a girl who usually asked about my golden retriever patients, handed me my cup without making eye contact. "Rough week?" I asked casually. She shifted uncomfortably. I think it's really uncool to promise to fund someone's startup and then pull the rug out because you're threatened by them." That's all. I took my coffee and left. By Friday, our mutual friend stopped replying to my text. Nina had told her empowerment circle I was hoarding clinic profits and refusing to let her buy groceries. She was telling anyone who would listen that I was a financial abuser holding her hostage. I didn't argue. I didn't post a rebuttal on Facebook. I didn't call Chloe to defend myself. Saturday morning, while Nina and Sven were leading a breathwork intensive in the backyard, I went to the bedroom. I packed 2 suitcases. I packed my suits, my casual clothes, my important documents, and my clinic server backups. I loaded them into the trunk of my car. I drove to the Marriott on the edge of town, checked into a room on the 4th floor, and sat on the edge of the stiff hotel bed. I pulled out my laptop and contacted Marcus. Marcus was the corporate attorney who had structured my LLC 3 years ago. He was a cynical, gray-haired man who charged $400 an hour and never wasted a minute of it. I sent him a brief email outlining the situation. He called me exactly 12 minutes later. "Tobias," Marcus said, his voice a dry rasp over the phone. I read the email. "I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Answer them with a simple yes or no." "Okay. Do you have the notarized operating agreement in your possession?" "Yes. It's in the safe at the clinic." "Has Nina ever been on the clinic's payroll? Even as a contractor? Even for 1 hour of data entry?" "No. Never." "Have joint funds, meaning money from the account she just drained, ever mingled with the clinic's operating accounts? Have you ever paid a clinic electric bill with personal money, or vice versa?" "Absolutely not. I have a strict firewall between business and personal." I could hear the scratch of a pen on Marcus's end. "Come to my office Thursday at 10 a.m., Marcus said. "Bring everything. Keep your mouth shut. Do not text her. Do not call her. And if she texts you, reply only with a thumbs up emoji to acknowledge receipt. Nothing else." "Got it." I hung up. The hotel room was completely silent. For the first time in 10 days, I didn't smell sage. I didn't hear Sven's clicking bracelets. I just heard the hum of the highway outside. I filed for divorce that Friday. I didn't give her a warning. I didn't sit her down for a tearful goodbye. I just paid Marcus his retainer, signed the paperwork, and went back to work. Nina was served the papers on a Tuesday afternoon. I know this because she was live streaming a crystal unboxing on Instagram from our kitchen. According to the clip that Chloe angrily texted me an hour later, a process server knocked on the door right as Nina was explaining the healing properties of amethyst. She opened the door on camera, took the manila envelope, read the first page, and physically dropped her phone. The screen went black, but you could hear her scream Sven's name. I didn't hear from her for 48 hours. Then, on Thursday morning, the real escalation began. I was in exam room 1, checking the stitches on a tabby cat, when I heard heavy boots in the reception area. The front door chime went off aggressively. I handed the cat back to its owner, a sweet older lady named Mrs. Higgins, and stepped out into the hallway. There were 3 men in dirty jeans and high-vis vests standing in my waiting room. One of them was holding a sledgehammer. Another had a reciprocating saw. Behind them stood Nina. She was wearing a tailored blazer and holding a clipboard, looking every bit the fierce entrepreneur she was playing on the internet. "Excuse me," I said, stepping between the men and the hallway leading to the kennels. "Can I help you?" The lead contractor, a burly guy with a thick beard, looked at a piece of paper in his hand. "We're here for the demolition. We're tearing out the cabinets in rooms 2 and 3 to install the plumbing for the wellness bar. Supposed to start at 9. I looked at Nina. She didn't flinch. "I'm executing my rights as a co-owner of this property," Nina said loudly, making sure the receptionist and Mrs. Higgins could hear her. "I will not be financially marginalized anymore, Tobias. This is my space too, and Sven's inventory arrives tomorrow." She was pushing. She wanted a scene. She wanted me to grab the sledgehammer or scream at her so she could film it. I noticed she had her phone propped up in her breast pocket, the camera lens facing out. "You don't own this property," I told the contractor, ignoring her completely. "I lease this space. The clinic is a sole proprietorship. If you swing that hammer, I will have you arrested for destruction of property, and I will sue your company for lost business." The contractor stopped. He looked at me, then looked at Nina. "Lady," he said slowly, "you told me you owned the building." "I own half of his assets," Nina snapped, her voice rising in pitch. "We are married. That means half of this is mine. Do your job. I'm not getting in the middle of a divorce, lady." The contractor turned around, waved his guys off, and walked out the door. The chime dinged pleasantly as they left. Nina stood alone in the waiting room. The clipboard was shaking slightly in her hands. She glared at me, her eyes manic and furious. "You think you can just shut me out?" she hissed, stepping closer. "You think a piece of paper means anything? Sven's lawyers are looking at your books, Tobias. We know you've been hiding money. You're terrified of my potential." "Leave," I said. "I'm not going anywhere. I have sweat equity in this place. I designed the logo. I chose the paint colors. I am a consultant, and I am taking what's mine." I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I didn't dial. I just held it. "I'm calling the police in 10 seconds, Nina. You are trespassing in a medical facility." She stared at me for a long, ugly moment. The spiritual enlightenment was gone. The calm frequency was gone. Just raw, entitled rage. She spun on her heel, kicked a display of dog treats off a bottom shelf, and stormed out. I cleaned up the treats. I went back into exam room 1. I apologized to Mrs. Higgins for the disruption, but as I washed my hands in the sink, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the realization of what was coming. The $80,000 was gone. The divorce was filed, but Nina wasn't going to let this go. She was going to try and burn my life down just to stay warm. The first match she struck was online. line. Brenda, my receptionist, called me at 6:15 a.m. on Friday. She had just gotten over the flu and was doing her morning routine of checking the clinic's voicemails and online portal. She wasn't crying, but her voice had that tight, reedy quality of someone trying not to panic. Tobias, you need to look at our Google page. Right now. I sat up in the hotel bed, rubbing sleep out of my eyes, and pulled my laptop onto my lap. I typed in the name of my clinic. Usually, we sat at a comfortable 4.8 stars. Lots of pictures of smiling dogs wearing bandanas, paragraphs from relieved cat owners, standard community goodwill. We were down to 2.1 stars. Overnight, 64 new reviews had been posted. None of them were from my clients. Dr. Tobias is a toxic narcissist who refuses to integrate holistic healing frequencies. He actively harms animals with his closed-minded scarcity complex. This clinic is a front for financial abuse. Do not bring your pets here. The energy is dark and oppressive. Refuse to let a qualified quantum wellness practitioner treat a dying animal. Disgusting.
Boycott!
I scrolled through them, the blue light of the screen burning my eyes in the dark hotel room. They all used the same buzzwords. They all sounded exactly like Nina. She had mobilized her TikTok followers and her mastermind group. People who lived in Florida, Oregon, and Texas were suddenly deeply concerned about the veterinary practices of a mid-sized clinic they had never visited. Are you seeing this? Brenda asked over the phone. I see it. Yelp is worse, she said. They posted pictures of the clinic with red text over it saying, abuser. We have 3 voicemails from regular clients asking if we're shutting down. Mrs. Gable canceled her puppy's vaccination appointment. That was the actual damage. The algorithm didn't care if the reviews were fake. Real people in my town were seeing this digital mob and getting spooked. Call Google and Yelp support as soon as they open, I told Brenda, keeping my voice steady. Tell them we are being targeted by a coordinated harassment campaign. Flag every single review. Don't reply to any of them. Just flag them. What about the appointments? If someone calls to cancel, let them. Don't beg them to stay. Just say, thank you, we respect your decision. We keep our heads down and we do our jobs. I hung up, went into the hotel bathroom, and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at the dark circles forming under my eyes. I was 34 years old. I had a medical degree, a thriving business, and I was living out of a suitcase while a guy named Sven burned sage in my living room, and my wife tried to destroy my livelihood on the internet. By noon, the situation escalated from digital to legal. Marcus called me while I was eating a protein bar in my office between appointments. I got her lawyer's letter of representation and their preliminary demands, Marcus said. There was no greeting. He was all business. That was fast. She hired David Corliss. He's a bulldog. Usually handles high net worth divorces where people fight over yachts. I'm surprised she got him. He requires a massive retainer. I stopped chewing. How massive? Usually 20 to 30,000 just to open the file. A cold wave washed over me. She doesn't have $30,000. She drained the joint account for Sven's supplements. She maxed out her personal credit card last month on a retreat in Sedona. Well, somebody paid him, Marcus said dryly. And based on this demand letter, Corliss thinks you're sitting on a gold mine. I'm sending you the PDF now. Have a seat before you read it. I opened the email. The document was 12 pages long, dense with legal jargon and aggressive formatting. Nina wasn't just asking for half the house. She was claiming sweet equity in the clinic. The letter argued that because she had chosen the paint colors for the waiting room and designed a promotional flyer 3 years ago, she was acting as an unpaid brand consultant and operations manager. Corliss was demanding a forensic valuation of the clinic and 50% of its total worth. Furthermore, she was requesting temporary spousal support to the tune of $8,000 a month, citing emotional distress and systemic financial stifling. And then I saw line item 14, reimbursement for business consultation fees incurred by the respondent for the benefit of the marital estate. $80,000. I stared at the screen. She was trying to make me pay for the money she stole to give to Sven. She was framing the 80 grand as a legitimate business expense that I was responsible for. Marcus, she emptied our emergency fund for a pyramid scheme, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to control it. Now she wants me to reimburse her for the money she took? It's a shotgun approach, Marcus replied calmly. Corliss is throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. He knows the business claim is weak, but he's using it as leverage. He wants you to panic and settle. I have the LLC paperwork. Clause 12. I know, and I'm going to bury him with it at mediation. But right now, you need to understand that this isn't going to be a clean break. They are going to drag this out. They are going to subpoena your bank records, your clinic's tax returns, your personal emails. You need to pull 3 years of statements from every account your name is on. Today. Fine. And Tobias? Yeah, do not talk to her, not a word. If you run into her at the grocery store, turn around and walk away. I spent the rest of Friday afternoon exporting bank statements and financial ledgers into a secure zip file for Marcus. The clinic was quiet. We had 4 more cancellations. Brenda sat at the front desk, looking miserable, refreshing the Google page every 10 minutes as new 1-star reviews trickled in. I left at 6. I picked up a greasy pizza from a place down the street from the Marriott and went back to my room. I was eating a slice over the cardboard box when my phone rang. It was Arthur, Nina's dad. I stared at the caller ID. Arthur and I had always gotten along. He was a man of few words, a guy who drank black coffee and spent his weekends restoring a 1968 Mustang in his garage. When Nina and I got married, he shook my hand, looked me in the eye, and said, "She's a hurricane. Good luck holding the roof down." It wasn't a joke. It was a warning. I answered the phone. "Hi, Arthur." "Tobias," he said. His voice was gravelly, backed by the faint sound of a television playing a baseball game in the background. "What the hell is going on over there? Nina didn't tell you. Nina drove over here 3 hours ago. She's sitting in my kitchen crying into a mug of tea. She says you locked her out of her own business, canceled her credit cards, and abandoned her because you couldn't handle her success." I let out a long, slow breath. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to destroy a father's image of his daughter, but the narrative was spinning out of control, and I was the only one standing in reality. "Arthur, did she tell you about Sven?" Silence on the line. Just the hum of the television. "She mentioned a mentor," Arthur said slowly. "Some guy helping her with a new business. Did she tell you she emptied our joint savings account? $80,000, Arthur. Every dime we had saved for emergencies, the mortgage, everything. She wired it to him." 80,000? Arthur repeated. The number hit him like a physical blow. You could hear it in the sudden tightness of his voice. $80,000 was 2 years of pension for a guy like him. Yes, for quantum wellness supplements. When I found out, I left and checked into a hotel. I didn't cancel her cards. She maxed them out. I filed for divorce today. Arthur didn't speak for a long time. I could hear him breathing. I could picture him standing in his living room, a grease-stained rag in his hand, looking toward his kitchen where his daughter was playing the victim. "You have proof of this?" he finally asked. "I can send you the bank statement right now. Do it." I took a screenshot of the $80,000 outgoing wire transfer, redacted the account numbers, and texted it to him. A minute passed. Then 2. "Tobias." Arthur's voice came back on the line. It was colder now. Harder. "I'm going to go have a conversation with my daughter. You keep your head down. Don't do anything stupid." He hung up before I could reply. I put the phone down on the nightstand. The pizza tasted like cardboard. I took a shower, letting the cheap hotel water pressure beat against my neck, trying to wash off the feeling of the day. When I got out, my phone was buzzing on the counter. It wasn't a call. It was a rapid-fire string of text messages. I picked it up. They were from Nina. "How dare you? You think you can turn my own family against me? My dad just kicked me out of his house. You are a monster, Tobias. You are actively trying to destroy my support system. Sven was right about you. You're a parasite. You think you won today? Just wait." I didn't reply. I followed Marcus's advice. I tapped the screen, sent a single thumbs-up emoji, and put the phone on silent. But as I lay in the dark that night, staring at the textured ceiling of the Marriott, the dread settled deep in my chest. Nina was backed into a corner now. Her dad wasn't buying her story. The money was gone. The divorce was real. And people backed into corners don't calm down. They lash out. On Monday morning, I found out exactly how far she was willing to go. I pulled into the clinic parking lot at 7:30 a.m. The sky was overcast, a dull gray that threatened rain. I parked in my usual spot near the back entrance. As I turned the engine off, I noticed a white van parked across the street. It had tinted windows and no commercial markings. I didn't think much of it until I walked up to the front doors of the clinic. There was a piece of paper taped to the glass. I reached out and pulled it down. It was a printed photograph. It was a picture of me, taken from a distance, standing outside the Marriott in my sweatpants, looking exhausted. Across my face, in thick red digital marker, someone had written, "Community warning. Do not trust." I ripped the paper in half and unlocked the door. Brenda was already there, standing behind the reception desk. She wasn't looking at her computer. She was looking at a stack of mail that had been dropped through the slot. "Tobias," she said. Her voice was trembling. "What is it?" She pointed to the stack. There were at least 20 envelopes. No stamps, no return addresses. They had been hand-delivered, hand-dropped through the slot overnight. I walked over, picked one up, and ripped it open. It was a photocopied sheet of paper. It looked like an official medical document. At the top, it had my clinic's logo, the one Nina claimed she designed. Beneath the logo was a typed statement. "Notice to all clients of Tobias Animal Clinic, due to an ongoing investigation into malpractice and severe financial mismanagement, this clinic may soon be subject to seizure. Tobias is currently under review for unethical treatment of animals and withholding vital holistic care. For the safety of your pets, please seek alternative veterinary services immediately." It looked real. If you were a civilian, a concerned pet owner who didn't know how legal notices worked, you would believe it. "Did you open the others?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "A few," Brenda whispered. "They're all the same. She's papering the neighborhood," I realized. "She's not just doing it online anymore. She's trying to poison the actual ground." I looked out the front window. The white van across the street was still there. The driver's side window rolled down a few inches. A smartphone camera lens poked out, pointed directly at the front doors of my clinic. Sven. I didn't run outside. I didn't yell. I didn't give him the reaction he was sitting in that van waiting for. Instead, I pulled my phone out of my pocket, unlocked it, and opened the camera app. I walked right up to the front glass of the clinic, stood in full view, and hit record. I zoomed in on the van. I got the make, the model, and a clear shot of the license plate. Then I panned down to the stack of fake medical notices in Brenda's hands. Through the lens, I saw the van's window roll up quickly. The engine started, a puff of dark exhaust kicking out the back, and Sven sped off, running a yellow light at the intersection. "Call the non-emergency police line," I told Brenda, my eyes still on the empty street. "Tell them we have a documented instance of harassment and distribution of fraudulent medical notices. Then call the State Veterinary Medical Board." Brenda blinked. "The State Board?" "Tobias Yes, if you call them. If Nina sends one of these flyers to the board, or if one of her followers files a fake complaint, I will be under investigation by the end of the week. We have to self-report the harassment campaign before they hear it from someone else. Get me the incident number from the police first, then we call the board. I spent the next 3 hours doing damage control. I didn't see a single patient. I sat in my office, staring at the wall, while a tired police officer named Miller took a report. He looked at the flyers, looked at the video of the van, and sighed. It's a civil matter for the most part, Officer Miller said, handing the flyers back to me. But printing a fake logo on a notice advising people their animals are in danger borders on tortious interference and maybe criminal mischief. I'll write it up. Give this incident number to your lawyer. If he comes back, call 911. When he left, I called Marcus. I read him the flyer over the phone. Marcus didn't sigh. He actually chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. She hired David Corliss, Marcus said, and she's out here acting like a teenager keying a car. Corliss is going to have a stroke when he sees this. How does this help me? She's scaring away my clients. It helps you because she's establishing a documented pattern of malicious interference with your sole proprietorship. Corliss is trying to claim she's a vital part of your business. Meanwhile, she is actively trying to destroy its valuation and defame its primary operator. You can't be a dedicated brand manager and a saboteur at the same time. Send me the police report. Marcus was right about the legal strategy, but the reality on the ground was bleeding me dry. By the end of September, the clinic's revenue was down 30%. The online reviews had done their damage, but the flyers had pushed it over the edge. People trust their vets implicitly. The moment a shadow of doubt is cast, especially regarding the safety of their pets, they just go somewhere else. It wasn't worth the risk to them. I had to sit Brenda down on a Friday afternoon and ask her if she could afford to drop to 4 days a week. She cried. She didn't want to leave me hanging, but she had a mortgage. I felt sick to my stomach. I was paying Marcus $400 an hour to fight a phantom, and my real-life receptionist was taking the hit. I cut my own salary to zero just to keep the lights on and the medical supply orders flowing. I lived off the shrinking remainder of my personal checking account and whatever protein bars were left in the break room. My life became a bizarre, split-screen existence. On one side, I was living in a $110 a night Marriott, washing my scrubs in the bathtub and eating microwave soup. On the other side, I was watching my wife live a life of manufactured luxury on the internet, entirely at my expense. Nina had shifted her content. The quantum wellness angle wasn't pulling the numbers she wanted, so she leaned hard into the divorce. She became a professional survivor. She posted tearful, highly produced videos from our living room, the house I was still paying the mortgage on, talking about the financial abuse she was enduring. She launched a GoFundMe for her legal defense fund. The goal was $50,000. Within a week, her followers had donated $12,000. She posted a video of Sven burning Palo Santo in my kitchen, talking about how they were cleansing the space of patriarchal scarcity. It was maddening. It was a daily exercise in biting my tongue until it bled. I wanted to post the bank statements. I wanted to post the LLC paperwork. I wanted to scream at the internet that she had stolen 80 grand from her own family to fund a grifter in a velvet blazer. But I followed Marcus's rules. I stayed silent. The silence, however, was starting to get to other people. On a Tuesday evening, I was at a local grocery store, standing in the aisle staring at a row of canned beans, trying to decide what I was going to eat for dinner. Tobias. I turned around. It was Chloe, Nina's sister. She was holding a basket, looking at me with a mixture of anger and extreme discomfort. I hadn't seen her since before I moved out. Chloe, I said. I didn't smile. I didn't offer a hug. You look terrible, she said bluntly. I live in a hotel, Chloe. I work 60 hours a week, and I spend my evenings exporting financial documents for a divorce I didn't want. She shifted her weight, gripping the handle of her basket tighter. Nina says you froze all her accounts. She says you're trying to starve her out, so she drops the business claim. Did she tell you where the $80,000 in our savings went? Chloe frowned. She said she invested it in her brand, and that you're just mad because she didn't ask your permission first. You always were controlling with the money, Tobias. I stared at her. The sheer force of the delusion was staggering. Controlling, I repeated. I managed the finances because she refused to. I paid the mortgage. I paid her car lease. I paid for the groceries. The $80,000 was our emergency fund. She wired it to Sven. Sven is her mentor. Chloe shot back, but her voice wavered slightly. She was defensive, but there was a crack in the armor. Sven is a scam artist, I said, my voice low and completely flat. And you know it. Deep down, you know exactly what kind of guy he is. Have you noticed he never pays for dinner? Have you noticed he moved into my house and doesn't pay rent? He's draining her, Chloe, and when the GoFundMe money runs out, he's going to vanish. You don't know anything about him, she hissed, backing away. I know more than you think, I said. I walked past her, leaving my basket of canned goods in the aisle. I wasn't hungry anymore. When I got back to the Marriott, I had an email from Marcus. The subject line was simply, "Call me." I dialed his number. He picked up on the first ring. "We got the forensic accounting back," Marcus said. There was a distinct edge of satisfaction in his voice. I had my guy pull the threads on the wire transfer, the one that went to the business account Nina set up for the quantum supplements. And the money didn't stay in that account for more than 48 hours, Marcus explained. It was transferred out in 3 separate transactions to a crypto exchange. From there, it was converted into Bitcoin and moved into an an unhosted offshore wallet. I sat down on the edge of the bed. The mattress spring squeaked in the quiet room. So there are no supplements. Oh, I'm sure there are some cheap tinctures sitting in boxes in your house, Marcus said. Prop pieces. But the bulk of the 80 grand? It's gone, Tobias. It's sitting in a digital wallet that we can trace but can't legally touch without an international court order, which we aren't going to get for a mid-level divorce case in family court. A cold, hollow feeling settled in my chest. I had known the money was gone, but hearing it confirmed, hearing the exact mechanism of the theft made it final. So she just gets away with it? I asked. No, Marcus said sharply. She doesn't get away with it. Because she is currently demanding spousal support and half your clinic, claiming she is destitute and that you are hiding assets. We now have irrefutable proof that she deliberately dissipated marital assets and attempted to conceal them in an offshore crypto wallet. He paused, letting the legal weight of that sink in. Furthermore, Marcus continued, I had my investigator run Sven. His legal name is Stephen Miller. He has a bankruptcy filing from 2018 in Ohio and 2 civil judgments against him in Florida for unpaid loans from previous female business partners. I closed my eyes. She doesn't know. She has no idea. Probably not, Marcus agreed. She thinks she's a visionary. He knows she's a mark. Do we tell Corliss? Absolutely not, Marcus said, his voice dropping into a register of pure calculated legal warfare. We don't say a word. Corliss is pushing hard for mediation next month. He thinks he has us on the ropes because of the clinic's dropping valuation. He's going to walk into that room thinking he's the smartest guy in the building. And we are going to let him present his entire case, Marcus said. We are going to let Nina sit there in her faded sweater and cry about how you financially abused her. And then I am going to drop a tactical nuke on the table. I didn't ask what the nuke was. I didn't want to know. If I knew, I might tip my hand, and right now my blank, exhausted face was the best poker face I could ask for. But getting to that mediation table felt like crawling over broken glass. 3 days after my phone call with Marcus, the bank that held the commercial loan for the clinic contacted me. It wasn't Gary, the local branch manager who always brought his golden retriever in for her annual checkups. It was a risk assessment officer from a corporate call center in Omaha. Nina's lawyer, David Corliss, had officially subpoenaed the clinic's loan origination documents and my business ledgers. That automated process flagged my account at the corporate level. The risk officer politely informed me that due to the pending litigation claiming 50% equity and the demonstrated volatility of the business's public standing, meaning someone at the bank had Googled my clinic and seen the barrage of fake 1-star reviews calling me an abuser, they were placing a freeze on my revolving line of credit. I sat in my office chair, staring at a stack of unpaid vendor invoices. You're freezing my credit line? Based on fake internet reviews and a frivolous claim? It's standard protocol during contested asset division, Dr. Tobias, the voice on the phone said, completely devoid of empathy. Once the mediation is concluded or a judge signs an order clarifying the ownership structure, we can reassess. Until then, the credit line is locked to prevent asset depletion. I hung up the phone and put my head in my hands. I needed that line of credit. It was the first week of October. I had to place my monthly pharmaceutical order in 3 days. Without it, I wouldn't have insulin for diabetic cats. I wouldn't have heartworm medication. I wouldn't have the anesthetics required to perform even the most basic emergency surgeries. A vet clinic without drugs is just a petting zoo. I opened my personal checking account app. I had $3,000 left to my name. The drug order was going to be $11,000. I didn't call Marcus. He was a lawyer, not a bank, and he had already told me to stop bleeding cash. I didn't call Arthur, even though I knew he was furious with Nina, because borrowing money from my estranged father-in-law felt like a line I shouldn't cross. Instead, I took my lunch break, drove my 2021 Toyota Tacoma to a used car lot 2 towns over, and handed them the keys. It was the truck I bought right after the clinic turned its first profit. It was my only luxury. I spent 4 hours sitting in a dingy waiting room that smelled like stale coffee and floor wax while a manager in a cheap suit lowballed me. I didn't argue. I traded the Tacoma for a rusted 2009 Honda Accord with a broken AC compressor and a check for $14,000. I deposited the check on my way back to the clinic and paid the pharmaceutical vendor in full. When I pulled the Accord into the clinic parking lot that evening, Brenda was locking the front doors. She looked at the dented silver sedan, then at me getting out of it. "Where's your truck?" she asked. "In the shop," I lied. She looked at my face for a long time. She knew. She didn't say anything, just gave me a tight, sad smile, told me to have a good night, and walked to her car. I went inside, sat in the dark waiting room, and pulled up Nina's Instagram on a burner account I'd made. I shouldn't have done it, but the masochism was a hard habit to break. She had posted a new story an hour ago. She and Sven were at a high-end organic bistro downtown. She was wearing a new linen dress. Sven was wearing a silk shirt unbuttoned to his collarbone. They were clinking glasses of green juice. "Nourishing our vessels after a heavy morning of legal trauma," the caption read. "Grateful for a partner who holds space for my healing. Abuse survivor quantum living." I turned the phone off, locked the clinic, and drove my rattling Honda back to the Marriott. The morning of the mediation, it was raining. A cold, miserable October downpour that turned the sky the color of wet cement. I met Marcus in the lobby of the mediator's office building downtown. The law firm occupying the top floor was the kind of place that had mahogany walls, abstract art that looked like it cost cost more than my clinic, and a receptionist who offered you sparkling water in a glass bottle. Marcus was wearing a charcoal three-piece suit. He looked sharp, relaxed, and utterly dangerous. He didn't offer me sparkling water. He just pulled me into a small side room before we went into the main conference area. Listen to me closely, Marcus said, keeping his voice low. Corliss is going to open strong. He is going to try to provoke you. He is going to paint you as a controlling, manipulative, financially abusive narcissist who trapped this poor visionary woman in a mundane life and then stole her life's work when she tried to fly. I swallowed dryly. Okay, you are going to do exactly what you did in that hotel room when this started. You are going to look at the wall. You are not going to roll your eyes. You are not going to sigh. You are not going to interrupt. If she cries, you do not react. You let them build their entire house of cards on the table. Do you understand? I understand. Good. Let's go make them pay for the wood. We walked into the main conference room. It was a massive space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gray city skyline. A long oak table sat in the center. The mediator, a retired family court judge named Harrison, was already sitting at the head of the table, organizing a stack of manila folders. A moment later, the double doors opened. Nina walked in first. I almost didn't recognize her. The polished, fierce, linen-wearing wellness guru from Instagram was completely gone. She was wearing a faded, oversized beige sweater that swallowed her frame. Her hair was pulled back into a messy, utilitarian bun. She wore zero makeup, making the skin under her eyes look pale and exhausted. She kept her head down, her shoulders slumped, clutching a canvas tote bag like it was a shield. It was a masterclass in visual vulnerability. Behind her walked David Corliss. Corliss was a man who clearly loved himself. He was tanned, with perfectly coiffed silver hair, wearing a custom navy suit and a gold watch that caught the overhead lights. He walked in like he owned the building, radiating a smug, aggressive confidence. He didn't look at me. He pulled out a chair for Nina, gently guiding her into it like she was made of spun glass. She kept her eyes glued to the polished oak table, her hands trembling slightly as she folded them in her lap. Marcus sat beside me, completely still. He uncapped a black Mont Blanc pen and placed it perfectly parallel to his legal pad. All right, Harrison said, adjusting his reading glasses. We are here today for the matter of the marital dissolution between Tobias and Nina. As a reminder, anything said in this room is confidential and for settlement purposes only. Both parties have submitted their preliminary demands. Mr. Corley, since your client initiated the specific claims regarding the business assets, you have the floor to open. Corley stood up. He didn't really need to, but he clearly liked the theatrics. He buttoned his suit jacket and placed both hands on the table, leaning forward to look directly at me. Your Honor, Corliss started, addressing the mediator but keeping his eyes on my face. We are here today to rectify a profound and systemic inequality. For 3 years, my client has poured her heart, her creative energy, and her uncompensated labor into building the Tobias Animal Clinic. She is the invisible architect of its success. Corliss paced slowly behind Nina's chair. She designed the branding. She managed the aesthetic environment of the facility to ensure client retention. She acted as a sounding board, an operations consultant, and an emotional cornerstone for a man who took her contributions and then ruthlessly locked her out the moment she attempted to assert her own financial independence. Nina let out a small, shuddering breath. She reached up and wiped a tear from the corner of her eye with the sleeve of her oversized sweater. When my client informed her husband that she was embarking on a new business venture, Corliss continued, his voice rising in righteous indignation, a venture designed to elevate their joint marital estate, he didn't just refuse to support her. He financially abandoned her. He froze her out of the business she helped build. He absconded to a hotel, canceled her access to vital funds, and left her destitute, relying on the charity of friends and internet strangers just to feed herself. I felt my jaw clench. I thought about the $14,000 I got for my truck. I thought about the $80,000 sitting in a crypto wallet. I stared at the blank wall behind Corliss's head. Therefore, Corliss said, slapping a thick folder down on the table, we are demanding a formal valuation of the Tobias Animal Clinic, of which my client is entitled to 50% as a silent partner and co-creator. Furthermore, we are demanding $80,000 in immediate restitution for business funds wrongfully withheld from her, and $8,000 a month in temporary spousal support until this matter is finalized. He sat down, adjusting his cuffs. He looked at Marcus with a tight, victorious smile. Your witness, counselor. Harrison looked over his glasses at Marcus. Mr. Marcus, would you like to respond? Marcus didn't stand up. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even look at Corliss. He reached into his leather briefcase, pulled out a single sheet of paper, and slid it exactly to the center of the oak table. This is the article of organization for the Tobias Animal Clinic LLC, Marcus said, his voice a dry, rasping monotone, filed and notarized 3 years ago. I direct your attention to Clause 12. Corla frowned, leaning forward to look at the paper. Clause 12, Marcus read aloud, enunciating every syllable perfectly, explicitly states that the LLC is a sole proprietorship, funded entirely by a commercial loan guaranteed solely by Dr. Tobias prior to the marriage. It contains a specific notarized provision rendering the business immune to marital division, regardless of subsequent marital status. Corliss waved a hand dismissively. A standard boilerplate clause. It doesn't negate the sweat equity my client invested. She was an unpaid manager, the precedent for community property in this state. She was not a manager, Marcus interrupted, his voice dropping an octave. She was not a consultant, and she certainly didn't invest any sweat equity. Marcus reached into his briefcase again. He pulled out a small black Bluetooth speaker and set it on the table. He tapped his phone screen. This is a clip from a podcast called Quantum Alignments, recorded exactly 3 weeks ago, Marcus said to the mediator. The guest is Nina. Nina's head snapped up. The vulnerability vanished from her eyes, replaced instantly by naked panic. Marcus hit play. The audio was crystal clear. It was the bubbly, overproduced voice of a podcast host. So, your husband is a veterinarian, right? That must be so cute. Do you go in and help with the puppies and kittens? Are you like the clinic mom? Nina's voice, laughing loudly. Oh God, no, I refuse to step foot in there. It smells like wet dogs and bleach. I have zero involvement. Tobias handles all the gross animal stuff. I focus strictly on high vibration healing. I wouldn't even know how to turn on the computers in that place. Marcus hit pause. The silence in the conference room was absolute. I looked at Corliss. The smug, aggressive confidence was gone. He was staring at the Bluetooth speaker like it was a live hand grenade. The color had completely drained from his tanned face. Marcus didn't smile. He just picked up his Mont Blanc pen. We do not recognize the business claim, Marcus said quietly. We do not recognize the demand for spousal support. And if you attempt to pursue a forensic valuation of my client's clinic, we will motion for sanctions against your firm for pursuing a demonstrably fraudulent claim. Corliss cleared his throat. It sounded like sandpaper. Your Honor, he said, turning to the mediator. I would like to request a brief recess to confer with my client. Granted, Harrison said, his face totally impassive. 20 minutes. Corliss stood up, grabbed Nina by the elbow of her oversized sweater, and practically dragged her out of the room. The heavy oak doors clicked shut behind them. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for a month. Marcus looked at me. Don't relax yet. That was just the business claim. Now, we deal with the missing money. The 20 minutes stretched into 45. When the heavy oak doors finally opened again, Corliss wasn't walking quite as fast. His shoulders were stiff. Nina walked entirely behind him, her eyes fixed on the carpet, the canvas tote bag clutched tightly against her chest. They took their seats. Corliss didn't button his jacket this time. He folded his hands on the table and looked at Judge Harrison. Your Honor, Corliss said, clearing his throat. The booming, theatrical voice was gone. He sounded like a man who just realized he had stepped on a landmine and was waiting for the click. My client formally withdraws all claims regarding equity, ownership, or valuation of the Tobias Animal Clinic. Harrison didn't blink. He just made a note on his legal pad. Noted. And the claim for spousal support and reimbursement of the $80,000 business expense? Corliss shifted in his chair. We are still pursuing those avenues. My client is currently without income and was operating under the assumption that the marital funds she utilized were a joint investment in a health and wellness startup. She needs transitional support, and we request that her legal fees be covered by the respondents. Marcus leaned forward. He didn't pull out a Bluetooth speaker this time. He pulled out a thick, spiral-bound folder with a blue cover. It was the forensic accounting report. He slid it across the table. Corliss looked at it, but didn't open it. That is a certified financial trace, Marcus said quietly. It tracks the $80,000 Nina withdrew from the joint savings account. Nina claimed it was invested in her wellness brand. It wasn't. Within 48 hours of the wire transfer, the entire sum was moved into a cryptocurrency exchange, converted to Bitcoin, and deposited into an unhosted offshore digital wallet. Nina's head jerked up. She looked at Marcus, then at the blue folder. What are you talking about? It went to the manufacturer. Sven paid the laboratory in Oregon. Marcus finally looked directly at her. His eyes were completely flat. There is no laboratory in Oregon, Nina. There are no quantum supplements. The boxes in your living room were purchased from a white label wholesaler on Alibaba for roughly $200. That's a lie, she whispered, her voice trembling. She looked at Corliss, pleading. David, tell him that's a lie. Sven showed me the invoices. Corliss opened the blue folder. He flipped past the title page and started reading the financial routing numbers. I watched his jaw tighten. It gets worse, Marcus said to Corliss. He slid a single sheet of paper across the table. You might want to check who exactly your client is doing business with. Sven is a man named Stephen Miller. He has 2 civil judgments against him in Florida for defrauding female investors and a bankruptcy in Ohio. He is a career grifter. Nina let out a sound that I can only describe as a physical gasp for air. It was the sound of reality crashing through the floorboards. She grabbed the single sheet of paper from in front of Corliss. Her eyes darted back and forth across Stephen Miller's rap sheet. No, she said. Her hands were shaking violently now. No, he's at the house right now. He's prepping for our webinar. He wouldn't do this. If he's at the house, Nina Fem, I suggest you call him, Marcus said calmly. Because as of this morning, those Bitcoin wallets were emptied. If I had to guess, Stephen Miller is currently on his way to an airport. Nina dropped the paper. She fumbled in her tote bag, pulled out her phone, and dialed a number. The room was dead silent. We could all hear the faint ringing from the phone pressed against her ear. The number you have reached has been disconnected or is no longer in service. The automated voice echoed in the cavernous conference room. Nina lowered the phone slowly. The blood had completely drained from her face. She looked small, just incredibly, devastatingly small. Corliss closed the blue folder. He looked at Nina, then looked at Marcus. Given the deliberate dissipation of marital assets and the fraud involved, Marcus said, his voice dropping into a register of absolute finality, we are denying the request for spousal support. We are denying the request for legal fees. The marital estate has a net zero balance outside of my client's protected business. If you attempt to pursue this in court, we will countersue for the $80,000 she stole. Corliss didn't argue. He didn't posture. He was doing the math in his head. He had taken this case on the promise of a massive business valuation and deep pockets. Now, he was sitting next to a woman who had just given all her money to a con artist. There was no gold mine. There wasn't even a copper mine. My client withdraws the request for spousal support, Corliss said stiffly, staring straight ahead, and the request for legal fees. David, Nina gasped, grabbing his arm. You can't. How am I supposed to live? How am I supposed to pay you? Corliss slowly removed her hand from his sleeve. That, Nina, is a conversation we are going to have in the hallway. Right now, sign the settlement agreement. The mediation ended 20 minutes later. The divorce was finalized in a rapid, brutal stream of signatures. I kept the clinic. I kept my debt. She took the remaining debt from her maxed-out credit cards and the ghost of an $80,000 mistake. When it was over, I stood up and buttoned my jacket. I walked out of the conference room without looking back. As I walked down the carpeted hallway toward the elevators, I saw Nina standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows. She was staring at the floor. The canvas tote bag was hanging limply from her shoulder. Corliss was standing 3 feet away from her, aggressively typing on his phone, already drafting his withdrawal of representation. She didn't look up when I walked past. I didn't stop. The fallout was swift and absolute. I moved back into the house that weekend. It was empty. The Himalayan salt lamps were gone. The massage table was gone, and the heavy scent of sage had faded into the walls. I spent Saturday morning throwing away the cheap cardboard boxes of quantum supplements that Sven had left behind in the garage. By November, the clinic's online reputation began to stabilize. Brenda and I spent hours flagging the remaining fake reviews, and once the divorce was public record, the local rumor mill quietly shifted its target. Mrs. Higgins brought her tabby cat back in for a checkup. The bank unfroze my credit line. The air in the building finally felt clean again. But I was tired. 3 years of grinding, 70-hour weeks, capped off by months of psychological warfare, had hollowed me out. I realized I didn't want to walk into that building every day and be reminded of the sledgehammers and the fake flyers. So, I answered an email from a corporate veterinary group that had been trying to buy my practice for a year. I negotiated a buyout that cleared my commercial loan, paid off the mortgage on the house, and left me with enough capital to start over. Sven, or Stephen Miller, vanished. I heard through the grapevine, meaning Chloe texted me one night when she was drunk and angry, that he had fled to Costa Rica in December. The catch was, Sven didn't just scam Nina. He had used her wellness empire to funnel money from a dozen other women in her mastermind group. He had built a mini pyramid scheme right under her nose, using her LLC and her face as the front. When the FTC launched a federal for fraud investigation, they didn't go to Costa Rica. They went to the registered owner of the LLC. They went to Nina. Last week, I was sitting on the back porch of my new cabin. I live in Montana now. I bought a small piece of property surrounded by pine trees, miles away from strip malls and ring lights. I work 3 days a week at a local large animal rescue, helping horses and cattle. My hands are dirty, the air is cold, and nobody talks about their auras. My phone rang. The caller ID said Arthur. I hadn't spoken to Nina's dad since the night I sent him the bank statement. I let it ring 3 times before I answered. Hello, Arthur, I said. Tobias, he said. His voice sounded older, heavier. What can I do for you? I heard him take a shaky breath. It's Nina. She's in a lot of trouble. The feds hit her with a restitution fine for that scam her mentor ran. $65,000. She doesn't have it. I don't have it. If she doesn't pay, they're going to file criminal charges for wire fraud. I looked out at the tree line. A light snow was starting to fall, dusting the pines in white. I'm sorry to hear that, Arthur, I said quietly. She's terrified, Tobias. She's living in my spare room. She can't get a job because her name is all over the internet with this fraud thing. I know she did you wrong. I know she lost her mind. But she's my daughter. Is there any way you could help her out? Just as a loan. I felt a pang of genuine sorrow for the old mechanic. He was a good man who had spent his whole life trying to fix things, and he was finally staring at something completely beyond his repair. Arthur, I said, my voice gentle but firm. I don't have any joint funds. I don't have a scarcity mindset, and I don't have a wife. I paused, listening to the silence on the line. Good luck to both of you, I said. I hung up the phone. I turned it off, slipped it into my jacket pocket, and walked back inside where it was warm.